and every story can change the world. Together we are Global Speakers Talk.
When pressure rises, you don't rise to your intentions. You default to what you've practiced. That's the core of my talk. 3 choices that reset your leadership. 3 choices that you can make this week to reset how you show up. I remember my first day as a new principal. Sitting in the parking lot alone, I had this death grip on the steering wheel. I was so nervous. I had been an assistant principal for 10 days when they made me principal at one of the toughest high schools in Texas. Not because I was so qualified, but because nobody else would take the job. I understood why. We were a failing school, labeled by the state as academically unacceptable and dangerous. Drugs, gangs, violence. I made a decision to step forward even though I didn't feel ready and to believe in my team. I walked in that first day, I met with the full staff, and I told them, I don't have all the answers. I don't know everything, but I know that if we pull together, we can turn this school around. And the full staff leaned in, and we got to work. Teachers who had given up started showing up early, but not just the teachers. It was a full staff. You could see it in their faces. You could feel it in the halls. Hope started creeping in. By the end of the year, we made huge academic gains. We finally made the community proud when we met standard for the first time in years. But I want to be clear about something. None of that happened because I had a perfect plan. I didn't. It happened because early on, we stepped forward before things were clear. There were no systems, no playbook, no guarantee that it would work, but waiting to feel ready wasn't an option. Looking back, that was my first real on-the-job leadership lesson in courage. When people hear courage, they usually think about confidence or bold moves. Luckily, for the rest of us, courage isn't reserved for just dashing into burning buildings. For most, it's in our everyday actions. In real leadership, courage is not feeling ready, but stepping forward anyway when responsibility shows up. At that point, courage looked like making decisions without all the answers. It looked like standing in front of a staff and saying, I don't have this fully figured out yet, but we're going to work on it together. And it looked like resisting the temptation to wait, because waiting for a perfect plan would have meant doing nothing. And doing nothing is its own decision. Most of the pressure points that we face aren't dramatic. They're quiet. A conversation we keep putting off, a decision we know we need to make, a change we know is necessary but uncomfortable. Courage in those moments is movement, not certainty. There's a part that we don't talk about enough. We often think we need to feel ready before we move, but very often it works the other way around. I just recently experienced this. 2 weeks ago, I made a decision that I was going to do something difficult. I signed up for a triathlon that's happening in September. I have 6 months to get ready, and I got on a routine: biking, running, swimming. Last Friday was my day to bike, and when the alarm went off, I just didn't feel like getting up. I couldn't picture myself getting on that bike and riding 10 miles. But I changed my focus. Instead of focusing on the 10-mile bike ride that I wasn't ready for, I focused on the small step, the action of putting my foot onto the floor, of getting dressed, tying my shoes, small steps like sitting on the bike and just pedaling. Before I knew it, I was halfway into the ride. And My body was into it. You would think that I was leading the Tour de France the way I felt. The movement changed how I felt. That's because our bodies and emotions are connected. Sometimes motion creates the emotion we're waiting for. That's why courage so often begins with movement. And that is how a reset begins. One small move at a time, long before things feel comfortable. But I almost learned another lesson the hard way. Courage and motion alone are not sustainable. If all you do is push forward without clarity, eventually people will burn out. We started that year and everyone was working hard. We got to Thanksgiving break and things were moving forward. But in a week where everyone was supposed to be at home, spending time with friends and family and recharging, I was in the office. It was Wednesday before Thanksgiving, and I put in a 12-hour day. And it hit me. I was on the verge of breaking. I could see cracks in my resolve. But I wasn't the only one working hard. If I was about to break, so was my staff. And I realized this wasn't sustainable. When the full staff came back, we focused on building systems, cutting through the noise, and doing what mattered most. We kept working hard, but we made the work sustainable. That was the moment I really understood something. Working harder hadn't been the breakthrough. Getting clear was. For me, clarity wasn't about vision statements or long plans. It was about deciding what actually deserved our time and energy. That matters because you cannot sustain effort if you're trying to carry everything at once. This isn't just about toughness, it's about capacity. And that capacity gets drained when everything feels important. There's a simple idea that helped me make sense of this. It's often called the 80-20 rule or the Pareto principle. The idea is straightforward. A small number of things usually drive most of the results. Roughly 20% of our efforts account for about 80% of what actually moves the needle. Under pressure, we tend to flip that. We treat everything like it's in the critical 20%. And when everything feels important, nothing really is. And that's when people burn out. So we had to make some hard decisions. Which few things mattered enough to protect our energy, and which things, even good things, had to wait. That's when sustainable progress became possible. Not because the work disappeared, but because it finally had boundaries. And this isn't just leadership work, it's personal work too. The same lack of clarity that burns out organizations burns out people. So here's a question for you. What is one thing that you need to stop doing this month intentionally? Not because it's bad, but because it no longer matters as much. Might be something you need to delegate, something you need to delay, something you need to stop altogether. For me, one of those things was constantly checking and responding to emails at work. Felt productive, but it was stealing energy from the work that mattered most. Instead, I blocked time to check and respond to emails daily when it would not interfere with other priorities. Clarity often starts when we decide what not to do. That decision is what gives a reset a chance to take hold. But clarity alone is not enough. You can focus on the work, you can build systems, you can protect people's energy, and things can still fall apart if you forget one piece. I learned pretty quickly that I couldn't do this work by myself. Progress only happens through people. And if you want to build a culture that lasts, you have to show that you care. Care isn't about being soft. It's about recognizing that leadership is always personal, whether we admit it or not. And that lesson came into focus for me in the leadership group that I worked with. 10 boys who taught me more about care than any training ever did. In the middle of that busy time of school turnaround, I was a new principal. And so I tried something a little bit crazy. I took the 10 boys that were causing the most chaos on campus and I formed a leadership club. These boys were already leading others just in all the wrong directions. We met once a week. And in just 2 weeks, I had to sit with someone. I went to the school counselor. You wouldn't believe what these boys have been through. Did you know when he was just 10 years old, Johnny had his uncle stuffing drugs into his backpack for him to deliver? Half of these boys go home to violence every night, the other half to addiction. How were we supposed to reach them? But I kept meeting with those boys, and as we sat together, we saw them turn around. And as the school transformed, all 10 of those boys ended up graduating. I thought that was the accomplishment, school improvement, 10 boys graduating, but the real win came years later at an elementary awards banquet. Young dad, holding his daughter's hand, his tie a little crooked, came up to me. Hey, Mr. Clinton, remember me? Johnny from my leadership club. That night, Johnny wasn't raising havoc in my hallways. He was a good dad, taking his daughter to receive her first honor roll certificate. That moment, I realized that I had been so nervous about not being ready, scared that I was going to fail. But those boys and that school just needed someone to show up and show how much they cared. I had shown up for Johnny, and Johnny had learned how to show up for his daughter. That experience taught me something important about care. You can't lead people well if you only care about the work. You have to care about the people doing it. But we often skip an important piece. If you don't care for yourself, you eventually lose the ability to care well for others. Your patience shrinks, your perspective narrows, even small things start to feel heavy. It's not a character flaw. That is a capacity issue. And capacity is at the heart of how you show up. This isn't about being indulgent or having perfect balance. It's about whether you're building the kind of capacity that allows you to stay steady under pressure. So I want to leave you with a simple question. What would it look like to care for yourself in a way that actually helps you show up better? Not perfectly, just honestly. Because sustainable leadership doesn't come from pushing hard forever. It comes from caring enough to sustain yourself and the people around you. As we wrap up, here's what I want you to remember. When pressure hits, you don't rise to your intentions. You fall to what you've practiced. So make 3 choices starting today. Choose courage. Tell the truth and take the next step, even if you do not feel ready. Choose clarity. Decide what matters most, then protect it with your time and attention. Choose care. Keep the standard high. Stay human and protect your capacity so you can sustain the work. Courage gets you moving. Clarity keeps you focused. Care keeps you steady. Those are the 3 choices that reset your leadership. Thank you for spending a few minutes with me.
Together we are global speakers talk.